Welcome to our deep dive into Nietzsche and his views on art. It looks like you're really interested in how art can help us face a world that doesn't always, offer those easy answers. Are you ready to kind of unpack how art can redeem us, at least according to Nietzsche?
I'm definitely ready. Let's dive in.
So to start, maybe we can talk about Nietzsche's famous death of God idea. Um, did he actually think God was dead?
Well, not literally, no. What Nietzsche was getting at was this decline of these traditional religious beliefs. The systems that provided that meaning and structure for so long, for centuries, actually. He felt like they were losing their grip on people, leaving a void.
I can see that happening.
Yeah. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how does this relate to art? Well, for Nietzsche, this is where art steps in. It kind of becomes this.
It fills the void.
In a way, yeah. But it's not just about filling a gap. You see, it's about offering a new way to find meaning. You've probably experienced this yourself.
Mm.
Moments when those old answers, they just don't seem to work anymore.
Yeah, I think we all have.
Yeah. And maybe you've questioned some beliefs that you held for a long time,
Yeah.
or felt this sense of uncertainty about the world. Nietzsche saw this as an opportunity.
Interesting, an opportunity.
Yeah. He believed that art, unlike those fading belief systems, could help us face reality, without all those old comforts, and actually find beauty and significance in just the human condition itself.
Okay, so not like escaping reality, but
No, not escaping, embracing it.
embracing it. Yeah.
Even the difficult parts.
Yeah. Which makes me think about Nietzsche's fascination with Greek tragedy. He wrote a whole book about it, right? The Birth of Tragedy, I think.
He did, yeah.
What was it about tragedy that he found so compelling?
That's a great question. And I think it really gets to the heart of how Nietzsche saw art. He saw something profound in those ancient Greek tragedies. They weren't just entertainment. They were grappling with some of the deepest and honestly often the darkest questions of human existence, suffering and loss and trying to find meaning in a world that can seem unfair or chaotic.
Yeah, I can see that.
And a key part of this was this balance, between these two kind of opposing forces. The Apollonian and Dionysian is what he called them.
Apollonian and Dionysian. Okay, break those down for me a little bit.
All right, so think of the Apollonian as representing order, beauty, rationality. Think of like a statue that's perfectly sculpted,
Okay.
everything in its right place,
Yeah.
balanced, harmonious.
Controlled.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have the Dionysian on the other side, and that's chaos, passion, instinct. Think of like a wild dance where you completely lose yourself in the movement and the music, just a raw primal energy.
So like two very different, almost opposite forces. How do those work together in art?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. For Nietzsche, great art didn't just pick one or the other. It had to embrace both. It's in that tension between those opposing forces that something powerful, meaningful emerges.
Okay, can you give me an example of that? Like, how do we see those forces kind of at play in a work of art?
Sure. Um, think about a movie like Moonlight,
Hmm.
specifically that scene on the beach, at night, with the moonlight reflecting on the ocean. Very Apollonian, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Visually stunning.
But at the same time, you have this intense, unspoken, emotional current, between the characters running under the surface, this raw, definitely Dionysian element. And it's that interplay between those two that makes it so powerful. And it's unforgettable, it's both beautiful and it's emotionally gripping all at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good example. I can see that. It's not about ignoring the darkness, trying to pretend it's not there.
Right.
It's about acknowledging it and maybe even finding that beauty in it.
Yeah, finding a way to embrace it. And that's what Nietzsche saw in Greek tragedy. It didn't shy away from the hard stuff. It confronted it. It made the audience confront those difficult realities along with the characters on stage. But it didn't leave them in despair. It gave them this catharsis, a release of all that pent-up emotion, and this feeling of having shared in something very human, something essential. And that, for Nietzsche, was the power of art, to help us confront these parts of life that are dark and challenging, and to find a sense of meaning, maybe even beauty within them.
It's like a hopeful way to kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think so.
But Nietzsche's exploration into the power of art, it didn't end with just tragedy.
Oh, no, not at all.
He also had some strong opinions on music.
Yes, he believed very strongly that music was the purest form of art.
Really? What made music so special in his eyes?
For Nietzsche, music bypassed language and logic, which he saw as getting in the way a lot of times. Think
No.
about it. Sometimes words can't express how we feel.
Oh, absolutely.
But music, on the other hand, It speaks directly to our emotions, right?
Right.
It bypasses those intellectual filters. It taps into that raw Dionysian energy, allowing us to just experience those powerful emotions without having to explain or analyze them.
I think we've all had those moments where music just completely transports us. Like a song comes on and suddenly you're back in a very specific memory and feeling all of those emotions that you felt in that moment. Or a song that just gives you goosebumps, makes you feel invincible. Music does have a way of going straight to the heart, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's what fascinated Nietzsche. He saw music as this incredible way to connect with something primal and essential about, being human, something that words often struggle to capture. He saw it as a way to tap into the raw, unfiltered emotional core of what it means to be human.
Okay, so it's that honesty, that willingness to kind of bypass all those intellectual barriers and speak to our emotions. That's what made music so powerful to Nietzsche.
Exactly. And this is where you start to see his ideas about art contrasting with those other systems of thought that try to explain suffering away or give us easy answers. Systems like religion or traditional morality.
You're saying art doesn't try to sugarcoat reality or give us that comforting but maybe false sense of security.
Right. Nietzsche saw those systems as offering a kind of false comfort, trying to smooth over the rough edges of existence with these promises of an afterlife or some kind of ultimate meaning. But art, he felt, doesn't do that.
Art doesn't try to explain those hard parts of life away. It presents them, raw and unfiltered.
Exactly. And by doing so, it allows us to confront those realities on our own terms. Let's find our own meaning and beauty within them. It's like the artist is saying, yes, life is tough, but look what we can create, what we can experience, even when facing suffering.
So it's not about denying that darkness, but about transforming it into something powerful and meaningful.
You got it.
This is all starting to make sense to me. But did Nietzsche see art's impact as purely personal, or did he think it could have like a bigger influence?
That's a great question. It leads us to another one of Nietzsche's insights, and that's the potential for art to be a force for cultural renewal. You see, he looked back at ancient Greece, and he saw how tragedy brought the whole community together. Remember the Apollonian and Dionysian?
Yes.
Well, he believed that through tragedy, the ancient Greeks were able to kind of confront, collectively, their fears, their anxieties, their hopes.
Yeah.
He saw it as a shared experience that helped them understand their place in the world and connect with something larger than themselves, something that fostered a sense of community and shared values.
I can see that. So it's like art being a bridge that connects us all and reminds us of our shared humanity.
Exactly. And he hoped that art could play a similar role in his own time, a time that he felt was becoming increasingly fragmented and nihilistic. He hoped it could bring people together.
And even though we don't really have these huge theatrical gatherings in the same way today, I can see how art still plays a similar role. Like think about all the discussions that happen online after a big movie comes out, or book clubs that form around a certain book. People are still using art to connect and to grapple with those big ideas together.
You're absolutely right. Whether it's a concert or a book club or even just two friends debating the ending of a movie,
What?
art gives us a space for dialogue and shared experiences and to understand different perspectives. And it reminds us that we're not alone in those struggles, that even in our differences, we still share that human experience.
Wow, this is so much more than I ever thought about when it comes to art.
And we're only getting started.
I can't wait to dive even deeper. So you mentioned earlier that we were just getting started. What else did Nietzsche have to say about art's power?
Well, you know how we were talking about art's honesty, about the human condition. Well, for Nietzsche, that honesty was crucial. He felt that art, unlike those systems that try to sugarcoat reality, it acknowledges the pain and the heartbreak, that whole spectrum of human experience. It doesn't shy away from those difficult truths.
Right, and that's where the power lies, right? It's like giving us permission to feel those tough emotions, to acknowledge that life isn't always, sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly. And, sometimes facing those difficult truths, it can be more comforting than just trying to ignore them.
Yeah.
Think about a time when you watched a movie or read a book that dealt with some really heavy stuff, and you somehow walked away feeling uplifted, maybe even inspired.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember watching Manchester by the Sea. It's a pretty heartbreaking story about grief and loss, but there's this incredible sense of resilience and humanity that shines through.
That's a perfect example. It's a film that doesn't shy away from the rawness of just human experience, but it also manages to find this glimmer of hope. It's like a testament to the human spirit,
Yeah.
our ability to endure. It's almost like the filmmaker saying, yes, life can be incredibly tough, but we can find beauty and strength even in the midst of suffering.
It's not about denying that darkness, it's about finding a way to kind of transform it.
Yeah, you got it. And this idea connects to another key concept in Nietzsche's philosophy, the importance of self-overcoming. He believed that, through confronting challenges and embracing the fullness of life, the good and the bad, we become stronger, more resilient versions of ourselves.
So it's not just about passively experiencing art, it's about letting it challenge us, push us to grow.
Exactly. It's about actively engaging with those difficult emotions, those uncomfortable truths, and allowing them to transform us.
I'm really starting to see how this all ties together now. But didn't Nietzsche's own views on art evolve over time? I read something about his relationship with Wagner, the composer.
Ah, yes. That's a very interesting chapter in Nietzsche's journey. You see, in his early work, he was a huge admirer of Wagner. He saw his operas as the ultimate expression of that, Dionysian spirit that we were talking about earlier. But as Nietzsche matured as a thinker, his views started to shift, and he eventually became pretty critical of Wagner.
Oh, wow. What caused that shift?
Well, I think part of it was Nietzsche just developing his own ideas more fully.
Mm.
He started to move away from these grand, sweeping narratives of Wagner's operas. He felt like they were becoming excessive, almost manipulative in their emotional intensity.
So he was looking for something more grounded, more focused on like the individual experience.
Exactly. And this is reflected in the music he began to appreciate. Like he became a huge fan of Beethoven, for example.
Okay, I can see how that fits. Beethoven's music is incredibly powerful, but there is also a sense of restraint, a focus on structure and form that balances that emotional intensity.
Yes. And he saw in Beethoven's music this purity of expression, this raw honesty, and a celebration of individual will that really resonated with his own evolving philosophy. He felt that Beethoven's music embodied this idea of overcoming adversity and finding that joy and affirmation, even while suffering. Not through, these grandiose narratives, but through the sheer force of human creativity and resilience.
So it's not about wallowing in the darkness, but finding a way to rise above it and transform that struggle into something beautiful and meaningful.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, this idea of transformation through art, it connects to another one of Nietzsche's concepts, the Übermensch or the Overman. Now, this isn't about some kind of superhuman being with superpowers.
Right, I've heard the misconception.
Yeah. It's more about a person who has fully embraced their own creative potential, who's learned to kind of shape their life into a work of art, so to speak.
Yeah.
They confront those challenges head on. They embrace all of their experiences, and they just create meaning, in a world that doesn't necessarily hand it to them.
That's a really powerful idea. It's like, we all have the potential to be artists, and not just, in the traditional sense, like painting or writing music, but in the way we live our lives.
Absolutely. For Nietzsche, art wasn't just something you passively observed. It was a way of being in the world. It was about approaching life with this sense of creativity, passion, and, that willingness to embrace all of human experience, to find beauty and meaning even in the midst of hardship.
This is all so inspiring, but how do we actually put this into practice? Like, how do we tap into this power of art to transform ourselves and our lives?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, talking about Nietzsche's ideas about art. And it's really not just about, appreciating beauty or escaping reality. It's more about facing those hard truths, right? And finding beauty in unexpected places and connecting with something larger than ourselves.
And as we wrap up our deep dive here, the big question is, how can you, the listener, actually tap into this power of art to, make a difference in your own life? How can art redeem you?
Right, because it feels so personal, like there's no one right answer.
Exactly. It's about finding what speaks to you, what moves you, what challenges you. What kind of art are you drawn to? What kind of art makes you think or feel deeply?
So it's about really paying attention to what resonates with us and maybe, exploring different types of art, different artists, and just seeing what kind of sparks our curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe there's a certain genre of music that really gets to you, or a style of painting that you find yourself drawn to. Follow that thread, see where it leads.
And what about creating art? We talked about how Nietzsche saw art as a way of being in the world, not just passively observing it.
Oh, that's such an important point. Don't be afraid to just try creating something yourself. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, doesn't have to be for anyone else. Just explore what it feels like to express yourself through some kind of creative act.
I love that. Write a poem, learn a few chords on the guitar, sculpt with clay. It's really about that process, the act of creation itself.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by what you learn about yourself along the way. What kind of hidden depths you might uncover, what new ways of seeing the world might emerge.
What if someone's looking for a more social way to connect with art, though?
Well, there are so many options out there. Explore what your community has to offer. Check out local galleries, attend a poetry reading or see a play, go to a concert, maybe even get involved in a local theater group or a choir. Sharing those experiences with others can be incredibly powerful.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's just something so special about being in a room full of people who are all moved by that same piece of music or performance.
Yes, those shared moments of collective emotion and reflection, they can really remind us of that, shared humanity that connects us all.
It's like art creates this bridge. And even just talking about art, with your friends and family, debating a movie's ending or sharing a song that moved you, those conversations can be so enriching too.
Absolutely, sharing those personal connections with art, hearing different perspectives,
Yeah.
it can deepen our own appreciation and understanding.
So it's really about finding our own way to engage with art, whether it's through quiet contemplation, expressing ourselves creatively, or having those shared experiences with others.
You got it.
Uh,
And there's no right or wrong way to do it. The important thing is to approach art with an open mind and a willingness to be moved, challenged, and transformed by it.
and as we finish up our deep dive into Nietzsche's ideas on how art can redeem us, I think that's a perfect note to end on. To embrace art's power to transform us, both individually and collectively.
I agree. It's a journey worth taking.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own exploration of art's redemptive power. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those creative sparks flying.